snow-covered forests of northern Japan lies a secret that could shatter everything you think you know about the nation's history. For over 150 years, Japan's government tried to erase an entire people from existence. They burned their sacred objects, silenced their ancient language, and forced their children to forget their heritage. But there was one thing they couldn't destroy: their DNA. What if I told you that the blood flowing through Japan's forgotten people holds the key to understanding who truly lived in Japan? What if everything you thought you knew about the country's origins was built on a carefully constructed lie? The Ainu people, Japan's indigenous inhabitants, carry genetic secrets that sound almost like science fiction. Their DNA contains specialized genes that help them survive brutal Arctic winters, immune system variants that protected them from diseases that would wipe out other populations, and genetic adaptations that let them thrive on a diet of raw fish and marine life. But here's where it gets wild. Their genetic markers don't just link them to ancient Japan, they connect them to indigenous tribes across the Pacific Ocean, even reaching North America. Their blood carries the memory of Ice Age migrations that crossed continents, revealing a Japan that existed before rice farming, the samurai, and the very idea of Japan was even born. This DNA story is so explosive that Japan spent over a century trying to bury it. Today, we're going to uncover that story. We'll meet the ghosts of ancient Japan and discover how their blood holds one of the most shocking cover-ups in modern history. Here we go. Chapter 1. Ainu. Japan's forgotten first inhabitants. Imagine walking through an ancient forest, where every tree, every stream, every bear has a soul. A world where spirits dance in the northern lights, and the wind carries the voices of ancestors who've lived here for 15,000 years. This was the world of the Ainu people, Japan's true first inhabitants, living in harmony with one of the harshest environments on Earth. The word Ainu literally means human in their language, and when you see them, you understand why early explorers were baffled. Unlike other Asian populations, the Ainu had deep-set eyes, thick, wavy hair, and full beards that could rival any Viking warrior. The men were incredibly hairy by Asian standards, and the women wore intricate tattoos around their mouths and hands, sacred markings they believed would guide them safely to the afterlife. The Ainu were not just a group of people. They were a people who carried the legacy of the land itself, their genes tied to the very soil and water of Japan, a living testament to an ancient era long forgotten by the rest of the world. But when European explorers first encountered the Ainu in the 1800s, they were so struck by their differences that some researchers thought they had discovered a lost European tribe. The Ainu's distinctive features, including their fairer skin and facial hair, were unlike any other Asian groups at the time. Their physical differences raised so many questions that for decades scientists couldn't figure out who they were or where they came from. Little did those early explorers know, they had found something far more extraordinary than a lost tribe. They had discovered the living descendants of Japan's original inhabitants, people whose DNA would one day unlock the secrets of human migration across the globe. Chapter 2. Ainu's ancient genetic legacy. For decades, scientists and researchers puzzled over the question, who were these people? Where did they come from? And most intriguingly, why did they look so different from everyone else in Asia? The Ainu's appearance alone sparked curiosity: deep-set eyes, thick wavy hair, and full beards that set them apart. But the Ainu are much more than a physical anomaly. They are living descendants of a people who arrived in Japan long before the rise of rice farming, cities, or even the samurai. The Ainu are 70 to 80% genetically descended from the Jomon people, the first humans to set foot in Japan over 15,000 years ago. While the rest of the modern Japanese population shares less than 10% of their DNA with these ancient inhabitants, the Ainu have managed to preserve almost their entire genetic legacy, a living bridge to Japan's distant and mysterious past. And here's where it gets truly fascinating. The Ainu carry a Y chromosome marker called haplogroup D1b, one of the rarest genetic signatures on Earth. This marker is so ancient and rare that discovering it is akin to finding a living dinosaur. It's a genetic connection that has stood the test of time, a relic of human history that traces back to a time when migration across the globe was limited to the harshest climates. But there's more. The Ainu's DNA isn't just old, it's remarkably specialized. Their genetic adaptations are nothing short of extraordinary. They possess genes that help them survive extreme cold and endure harsh Arctic environments. Their immune systems have evolved to protect them from diseases that would wipe out most populations. Their metabolism is uniquely suited to thrive on a diet of raw fish and marine mammals, something most people would never survive on. The Ainu's genetic legacy doesn't just connect them to their past. It's a living testament to their resilience, to a people who survived against all odds, adapting to one of the world's most unforgiving environments. Chapter 3. The Forced Assimilation and Isolation of the Ainu. Around 2,300 years ago, a new wave of people began migrating into Japan from mainland Asia. These migrants, known as the Yayoi, brought with them the revolutionary practice of rice farming, along with metal tools and a completely different way of life. The Yayoi's advanced agricultural methods allowed them to thrive in Japan's warmer southern regions, but as they spread, they gradually replaced many of the ancient Jomon Ainu populations across the islands. As the Yayoi settlers flourished, the genetic signatures of the original Ainu inhabitants began to fade. Over time, their genes mixed with the new arrivals, and the once distinct Ainu heritage began to disappear from the broader Japanese population. But the Ainu weren't wiped out entirely. They became isolated, trapped in what could be described as a genetic time capsule. As the rest of Japan transformed, the Ainu were pushed further north to Hokkaido, Japan's cold, mountainous frontier. The fertile plains of southern Japan were perfect for rice cultivation, but Hokkaido was a harsh land, unsuitable for the farming life of the Yayoi. Here, in the rugged wilderness of the north, the Ainu continued their traditional hunter-gatherer lifestyle. They hunted bears, fished in the cold rivers, and foraged in the dense forests, practices that had sustained them for thousands of years. But what seemed like a curse, a forced relocation, actually turned out to be the Ainu's salvation. This isolation allowed them to preserve their ancient way of life and their genetic purity, far from the influences of the outside world. While the rest of Japan underwent mass genetic transformation, the Ainu's DNA remained almost untouched, keeping alive their unique heritage and ancient traditions. In a way, this isolation acted as a protective shield, allowing the Ainu to preserve their culture, traditions, and, most importantly, their genetic legacy. A legacy that would one day be uncovered to reveal a history far older and more complex than the rest of Japan's. Chapter 4. The Meiji government's attempt at erasure. As Japan entered the late 19th century, a new force of modernization swept across the country. The Meiji government had grand ambitions to transform Japan into a unified, modern nation that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the great powers of the world. But in their pursuit of progress, they viewed the Ainu's distinct culture, language, and identity as obstacles to their vision of a homogeneous, civilized Japan. The Ainu, whose existence had been intertwined with Japan's landscape for millennia, found themselves at the mercy of a government determined to erase their legacy. In 1868, the government launched a campaign of forced assimilation that sought to obliterate the Ainu's heritage. Their language was silenced, their sacred practices banned, and their traditional way of life ridiculed as backward. The Ainu, once masters of the subarctic wilderness, were forced to relinquish their connection to the land, the very foundation of their culture. In 1899, the government passed the Hokkaido Former Aborigines Protection Act, a law that on the surface appeared to offer protection, but in reality was nothing more than a blueprint for cultural erasure. The government took control of Ainu land, seizing ancient hunting grounds that had supported Ainu communities for 15,000 years. These lands were then handed over to Japanese settlers who flooded into Hokkaido by the thousands, forcing the Ainu off the land they had inhabited for centuries. The pain didn't stop there. The government turned its attention to the Ainu children. In schools, Ainu kids were beaten for speaking their native language, an offense punishable by physical punishment. Teachers would strike them with sticks whenever an Ainu word slipped from their lips. The children were given Japanese names, forced into Japanese clothing, and taught that everything about their heritage was shameful and wrong. The sacred tattoos, which women wore for centuries as symbols of beauty and spiritual protection, were forcibly removed. These tattoos weren't just ink on skin. They were markers of identity, deeply spiritual and intimately connected to the Ainu's beliefs about the afterlife. They were forced to abandon their traditional hunting and gathering lifestyle, and many Ainu were pushed into farming, given poor, infertile land that could not sustain their way of life. This was not just land. It was a severing of roots, of connection to the past, to their ancestors. Their spiritual ceremonies were outlawed, and their way of life was considered an obstacle to Japan's modernization. Chapter 5. The Rediscovery of the Ainu's Genetic Legacy. As the world moved into the 21st century, the Ainu's genetic story, one that had been buried for centuries, began to emerge from the shadows. For decades, the Ainu were seen as a fading, almost forgotten part of Japan's history. Their culture, language, and way of life had been pushed to the brink of extinction. But deep within their DNA, a treasure trove of ancient history was waiting to be uncovered. In 2021, a groundbreaking study brought the Ainu's genetic legacy to the forefront of scientific discovery. Researchers, using the most advanced genome sequencing technology, analyzed the DNA of over 3,200 people across Japan, one of the largest and most comprehensive studies of a non-European population ever conducted. What they found was nothing short of stunning. The results revealed that 44% of people in central Hokkaido, the heart of the Ainu homeland, still carried the Ainu genetic markers, even after more than 150 years of forced assimilation, intermarriage, and cultural suppression. Despite the best efforts of the Japanese government to erase them, the Ainu's genetic fingerprint had survived, thriving in the people of Hokkaido. But the story didn't end there. The study also uncovered genetic links between the Ainu and indigenous populations across the northern Pacific, including Siberian tribes and Native American communities. Their DNA held the echoes of ancient migrations that took place during the Ice Age, when early humans crossed vast ice bridges and island chains that connected what is now Siberia to the Americas. The Ainu's genes told the story of humanity's ancient journey across frozen landscapes long before the world as we know it took shape. These genetic connections linked the Ainu not just to Japan, but to a global network of indigenous peoples, each with their own stories of survival, migration, and adaptation. The study revealed a shared heritage that spanned continents, showing how the Ainu's genetic legacy was intertwined with the history of human migration across the Northern Hemisphere. This rediscovery wasn't just about science, it was about reclaiming identity, about telling a story that had been suppressed for generations. The Ainu's genetic legacy is a living, breathing testament to their resilience and survival, and it's a story that continues to shape Japan's understanding of its own origins. Chapter 6. Revival and Ainu Activism. Despite centuries of cultural destruction, the Ainu people have found a way to revive their culture in the modern world. For years, their language was silenced, their arts nearly lost, and their identity nearly erased by the forces of assimilation and cultural suppression. Yet in the face of all these challenges, the Ainu have rebuilt and reclaimed their cultural heritage with strength and resilience. Today, a new generation of Ainu activists, artists, and musicians are leading the charge in this cultural renaissance. They are taking their traditional designs and blending them with modern art forms, creating stunning works that speak to both their ancient heritage and their contemporary struggles. Artists are bringing back sacred patterns and symbolic motifs that once adorned their bodies and objects, weaving them into the fabric of modern Japanese life. These creations serve as a powerful reminder that the Ainu culture is far from dead. It is alive, evolving, and thriving. Musicians are also playing a pivotal role in Ainu's cultural resurgence. They're resurrecting ancient songs that were almost lost forever, melodies passed down through generations, preserved in memory and old recordings. These songs are more than just music. They are the heartbeat of Ainu history, carrying with them the voices of ancestors who once walked the forests and rivers of Hokkaido. The Ainu language itself, once on the verge of extinction, is being revitalized through language programs. Linguists are working closely with the remaining native speakers to document, teach, and pass down this precious language to younger generations. But this revival is not just about preserving old ways, it's a powerful act of defiance. The Ainu's genetic legacy has forced Japan to confront its historical myths and the injustices faced by indigenous peoples. Japan's denial of the Ainu's existence has been a stain on its modern identity, and now the Ainu story is demanding recognition. It's a story of survival and resistance, a story that the world can no longer ignore. Standing in the ancient forests of Hokkaido, you can still feel the presence of the Ainu ancestors. These woods are not just trees, they are a living testament to the strength and spirit of the people who have lived here for 15,000 years. The Ainu call these spirits kamui, and their presence is still felt today in every leaf that falls, in every breeze that whispers through the branches. Their legacy lives on, not just in their culture, but in the very DNA that Japan once tried so hard to erase. The Ainu have proven that, no matter how hard others may try to erase them, their identity will never disappear. The spirits of the Ainu are not only alive in their culture, but in the very blood that continues to run through the veins of the Ainu people today. What do you think of this hidden history of the Ainu people and their genetic legacy? It's a story of survival, resistance, and the undeniable truth that no matter how hard history tries to erase a people, their heritage, culture, and identity remain etched in the very DNA of the world. The Ainu's journey has only begun to be understood, and there are countless more genetic mysteries waiting to be uncovered. What stories from the past would you like us to explore next? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit subscribe. There are many more untold hidden histories still to be discovered, and the voices of the past demand to be heard, now more than ever. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.